On today's Retro Tech Repair, we're going to be fixing this yellow stripe problem on my TRS-80 Coco 2. So here we have our TRS-80 Color Computer 2 or Coco 2 that I bought spares or repair on eBay a couple of years ago. If you're a regular to the channel, you've seen this feature in a couple of videos already. It was in my low light retro bright winter solstice special, although it has yellowed a bit in the 2 years since then. We've seen the unresponsive keyboard repaired with what was to me one of the strangest causes that I've seen in a retro computer, and we've done memory and a homebrew composite mod update. And it was after that composite mod that I'd noticed a strange behaviour or phenomenon on the display. So I've noticed that some of the games have a kind of coloured stripe down the left-hand side, and I haven't really worked out why. All I do know is that it's not to do with the composite mod because it was doing it when it was connected up on RF. Whether it's a compatibility issue between the LCD display or whether it's something else, I don't know. If you have an idea, perhaps leave a comment. And in fact it was comments from those valued viewers that led me to a solution and our video today. Although actually, if I'd bothered to read it properly, the answer was in the service manual all along. But first, using our friend here Donkey King, let's take a look at how the Coco 2 generates colour video. Now the graphics driver that the Coco 2 uses, and in fact the Dragon 32 also, is the MC6847. And it supports only 4 colours in its multicolour graphics modes. And in its highest resolution mode, supports only 2 colours. Those being a foreground and a background. Perhaps worse still, these colours were from a fixed palette, which led to some pretty garish video games which users of the PAL Coco 2 or the Dragon 32 in the UK would be all too familiar with. So how do we avoid a blue gorilla, or worse still, using the other fixed palette, a pink one? The answer is, if you live in a PAL region, well, you don't. You are stuck with either the blue gorilla or the pink gorilla, or a black and white one if you so desire. And if we pause the black and white one for a moment, we can see what actually is going on. In the black and white version of the game, the video driver chip is in high resolution mode and the characters are drawn as a series of black and white lines. In the NTSC version of the Coco 2, there's some clever circuitry that forces the video chip to generate a colour burst signal, even when it's in black and white mode, and manipulates that signal to give the desired colours of blue and red. It's when this colour artifacting circuitry starts to fail that we see the yellow bar on the left-hand side of the screen. So it's this artifacting circuit that we turn our attention to today, and both the problem and its possible solutions are described in this section of the service manual. When describing potential problems of the colour artifacting circuit, it states that one strange symptom is that of the left side of the screen being shaded a different colour from the rest of the screen. Aha! It goes on to say that this may be caused by a defective U4, by leakage or improper value of capacitor C26, or by increase in value of resistor R10. So it looks like it's time for VoiceOver Me to step aside and let live recording me explore some more. So here we have our TRS-80 Color Computer 2 or Coco 2. This particular model is a US import. You can tell by the brand in Radio Shack and the spelling of colour, although I think some of the later machines may have been branded Tandy. As I say, because this is a US import, it's giving an NTSC video out, and I've modified this particular one to give a composite video out. If you want to see how that modification was done, you can check out that on one of my other videos. Because it is a US import, it has also been run off a step-down transformer, which I have here out of shot. That's giving me the 120 volts that I need to run this machine. So we're just going to disconnect it from that power supply before we go ahead and take it apart. Just carefully remove this connector here, thin kind of ribbon flex PCB membrane style connector. Lift the keyboard out of the way. And here we can see our C26 capacitor and our 555 timer. So let's get the printed circuit board out so we can get access to those components.
So I could probably leave this piece out, probably there for EMC protection, but it was there originally, so I'm just going to go ahead and keep it. You can see on the board here a couple of hand modifications. They're not actually modifications, they're areas where, when I'd done previous repairs on this printed circuit board, I'd lost some of the tracks and damaged them during the unsoldering process, and consequently I've had to put wire links on there, and they have a little bit of green nail varnish kind of holding them in place as well. So those would not have been there from the factory. Let's turn this over and take a look for our timer again. I think I'm going to start by replacing this C26 capacitor. And we can see from the microscope that the left-hand pin, as we look at it, has desoldered nicely, but that the right-hand one still has some solder in place, so we need to get rid of that.
So I removed the residual solder using my soldering iron and some desoldering braid, and then removed the capacitor.
So now we have our suspect cap. Let's see if we can measure it. And there it is, 1069 picofarads, right on spec really. I think it's supposed to be 0.001 microfarads, so really pretty close. I don't think the capacitor's our problem. My guess is that 555 timer is getting quite tired now. So I'm now going to have to do something I don't really want to do, which is remove this 555 timer. The reason that I don't want to remove it is because this board is quite fragile and I've damaged the board elsewhere trying to remove and replace parts in the past. But the 555 timer is very common, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut each of these legs with a sharp pair of cutters, and then hopefully I'll be able to remove each pin individually, and that will reduce the likelihood of me damaging the printed circuit assembly, although, you know, it might still happen, of course. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do. Let's have a go. So now we have that removed, I can have a go at removing these pins individually. Okay, so that's come out pretty clean this time. I don't think I broke any tracks, so we'll go ahead and solder in a nice C holder. This one isn't the best quality, but it's what I happen to have, so it's going to have to do, and we'll replace that cap, or at least we'll solder the existing cap back in place. So with that done, I can now slide in my new 555 timer. We'll reassemble everything and hope that it works.
But it's not good news. Although we no longer have the yellow bar, and we do have colour in high-res mode, those colours are magenta, cyan and orange.
So, did you spot what I did wrong? Did you? Well, I'll tell you. I put my 555 timer in upside down. A rookie mistake. Let's turn it around. I don't think it's going to survive that, do you? Maybe I'll just put a new one in. This time we'll try and get it in the correct orientation, of course. Let's try that again.
But unfortunately, the news isn't good. Although we now have the desired colour palette, the coloured bar down the left-hand side is still very much there, despite the replacement of the 555 timer with a new one.
Right, well, I don't know. I think we're going to, this is unplugged by the way, we're going to turn our attention back to that capacitor that we had previously declared to be good, see if in fact replacing it has any benefit. 1068 picofarads. So we'll get an alternative. Let's see what this measures at. 971 picofarads. So 100 picofarads less than the other one, something like that. We'll try it. Who knows? Let's see if that fixed our problem. And unfortunately, no it didn't. The stripe looks narrower, but it's still very much there. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do, since this improved it by putting a smaller value in, I'm going to put an even smaller value of cap in there and see if that fixes the problem.
The cap that I picked measured at 660 picofarads, so let's get the old one out and the new one soldered in. Unfortunately, I did lose a solder pad on the underside of the board during the desoldering process, but luckily there were no tracks going to it, and I was able to solder in the replacement capacitor from above. So with that done, let's give it another go. Fantastic. Success at last. Our yellow, or sometimes peach-coloured bar seems to have gone. So let's get everything put back together and take a look where we ended up. Everything seems to work a treat. Let's try it with a different game, just in case. My, what a clicky joystick, but the good news is that the display is nice and clear and there's no yellow bar. I'd be interested in your opinion as to whether I should have used a third and different 555 timer, or put a different value of resistor in the circuit rather than lowering the value of the capacitor. But I'm content with the result nonetheless. But that does about wrap it up for our Coco 2 for today, and perhaps for me, for good. It really is a great little machine and I've really enjoyed owning it, but I need to make room now for some more projects. But I do hope you've enjoyed the video today, and that if you have, you'll consider leaving a comment or hitting subscribe. And until next time, I'd just like to thank you so much for watching Retro Tech Repair.
Now the plate. Oops. And off we come with the lid.